I guess that means it's time to begin. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight to our Life and Calling lecture, which will be a little different format tonight than we normally offer. This lecture series is sponsored by the chaplain's office here, and if this is your first time here, my name's Jonathan Huggins, and I'm the chaplain. The Life and Calling series is a part of a group of lectures where we try to bring people to campus who are doing interesting work in the world, something that might inspire our students or that connects to things that we are trying to do here on campus and want to do better. So we bring in guest speakers who can speak to that. Tonight's program will go until about 8:15. That's what we'll aim at stopping by then, at that point at the latest. Let me now introduce to you our guest speaker and tell you a little bit about the organization she represents. So, tonight we are hosting Mary Berry. She is the executive director of the Berry Center in Kentucky. She was raised by her parents, Wendell and Tanya Berry, at Lane's Landing Farm in Henry County, Kentucky, from the time that she was 6 years old. She graduated from the University of Kentucky in 1981 and then farmed for a living in Henry County, starting out in dairy farming, growing burley tobacco, and later diversifying into organic vegetables, pasteurized poultry, and grass-fed beef. Her husband, Kentucky farmer Steve Smith, started the first CSA farming endeavor in the state of Kentucky. Mary currently serves on several boards, including recently at Sterling College in Vermont. She speaks all over the country as a proponent of agriculture of the middle, which we might explain that phrase in a minute, in defense of small farmers and in the hope of restoring a culture and economy that has been lost in rural America. Her writings have appeared in various publications and collections, including Letters to a Young Farmer, On Food, Farming, and Our Future, and the introduction for a new edition of essays, Our Sustainable Table. The Berry Center seeks to put the writings of Wendell Berry to work by advocating for small farmers, land-conserving communities, and healthy regional economies. It's a very multifaceted center, the Berry Center is. It's not affiliated, as far as we know, with Berry College or Martha Berry, even though the name is similar. And their beef product is called Berry Beef, similar to Berry Angus beef, right? They have a farm and a forest institute there, as well as an agricultural center, bookstore, archives, as well as the Our Home Place meet. In 1977, Wendell Berry published The Unsettling of America. It awakened a national and global conversation on the dire state of agriculture. And though Wendell Berry writes about many things, and just maybe by a show of hands, how many of you in here have read something by Wendell Berry? All right, that's a great show of folks. He writes about many things. There's poetry, there's novels, there's essays. They're all rooted in these agricultural ideals of community, care, place, relationships, economics, frugality, but also nature and reverence. That multifaceted nature of his writing is one of the things that a lot of people love about him. In my own experience, this has been true, but also when I meet other people who have read Wendell Berry's works, they speak about it almost as if it was a conversion experience. Like there was me before I read Wendell Berry, then there was me after, and I knew I could never be the same. I had almost wished when I read the very first essay that maybe I hadn't read it, because now I was responsible for this information that I knew and needed to do something about. So would you join me in welcoming Mary to Berry College? Thank you. So what we're going to do, and forgive me, I'm new to this kind of format. Instead of a lecture, I'm going to just bring up several topics that we're going to discuss. And I'll kind of throw out the topic and a question to Mary and let her talk to us about it. All right? So we'll begin with our first question, which is just simply, Mary, would you be willing to tell us a little more about yourself, your story, and what it's been like growing up both farming and being the daughter of Wendell Berry?
Well, many people seem to feel, because you said they do, that there's either before they've read my father or after. Well, I can tell you that my entire existence is, he is responsible for the fact that I'm living on the earth. So I owe him a lot, and my mother, as a matter of fact. Before I get into more about me, I'd like to say how glad I am to be here. I've had a wonderful day, a wonderful host, thank you. I've met just wonderful people, and I'm looking around and seeing some of the faces that were in the class that I talked to this morning, and the professor from the class that I taught this morning. But it's been really wonderful to be here. Most of you appear to me to be students, but I'll just say to those of you who aren't students here, what a wonderful young people. If the class and the lunch that I had with the young people here is representative, and I expect that it is, it's just wonderful, wonderful young people here. It's wonderful to be here. Beautiful campus. It's interesting to hear the name Berry all the time and everywhere, and that, doesn't hurt my feelings. But anyway, to the topic at hand. I don't remember a time that if I wasn't at home, I didn't want to be at home. My parents, when I was very young, my parents and of course, they were making me do it, lived abroad for a year. We lived in New York for a couple of years. We lived in California, where my mother is from. My father was a student at Stanford University. And I don't remember a time, I have no memory of a time that I didn't want to get back to Henry County. I'm just one of those people. I'm just born to be in the place that I'm from. I think I inherited this from some of my family, my father and my grandfather and my grandmothers and so on. So I'm an extremely placed person and very grateful to be that. Now, being raised by Wendell and Tanya Berry was not always perfect. When I was very young, I can't remember what age I was, but I felt that I woke up one morning and thought, why are we doing everything the hardest way we can possibly do it? And why can't we just live like other people? I think I said to my parents nearly daily for some amount of time, I did not choose to live this way. I wanted a television more than I wanted my next breath. I wanted, my parents still have no screens. I wanted to live like everybody else was doing. And I think, did I talk about the composting privy today? Yes, well, I'll tell you again. This row right here doesn't need to listen. When I was about 15, my parents, on top of all the other embarrassing things they were doing, they installed a composting privy. And that composting privy was reported on in the Louisville Courier-Journal in a huge, what I thought, a big, long article about my parents. And so that came out in the Sunday magazine section, and on Monday I went back to high school, where people were amused, to say the least, by the fact that we had a composting privy. So my father then enjoyed the fact that I was suffering, because he had such high ideals and thought that any kind of waste was wrong. I would come home, or dates would come pick me up at my home. This is probably more than I should say, but I'm going to say it anyway. And there would be volunteer plants coming up around where he had mulched, if you following what I'm talking about. And there would be something like a volunteer tomato. And Daddy would say, I think Mary ate that one. So you see, I suffered. But during those years of my growing up, I will say by the time I went to college, I think there was a general sigh of relief. But all those years of suffering and complaining and so on, I never really thought my parents were wrong. I never really thought they were wrong about much of anything. And to this day, I can tell you that I don't think they've been wrong about much of anything. They have lived the way they think the way they decided to live. They've lived according to their own standards.
Well, one of Wendell Berry's most famous writings is called The Unsettling of America, and we have copies for sale, actually in the back afterwards, if you're interested. It's been in print for almost 50 years. It could have been written last year rather than 50 years ago, and in that sense it's kind of timeless. In some ways, what has happened is even worse than Wendell predicted in that book. Where do you think we see worse outcomes? Where have things gone worse? And maybe are there some bright spots in the mix? Something that gives you hope for the rural places in our country?
Well, I don't have any trouble with hope. I am deeply hopeful. I have no doubt that we can do better. And I